Welcome to this channel. At the sum of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories for you. Subscribe. On the shimmering planet of Zaylar Prime, in a galaxy where beauty and status ruled, the Zorathians lived as the aristocrats of the stars. Towering with graceful limbs, adorned with silvery skin that shimmered like molten metal, the Zorathians were known across the universe as a people of unparalleled elegance. Their cities floated in the skies, crafted from translucent crystal that reflected the light of 3 moons. Everything in their lives was designed to be a spectacle, flawless and refined. But beneath the veneer of perfection, nestled in one of the floating estates of the Arvalith family, lived a creature that was anything but beautiful. Gruv, a miserable creature by Zorathian standards, was kept in the shadowy corners of the Arvalith mansion, a crumbling, secluded chamber far from the eyes of visitors. The mansion itself was a sprawling marvel, all gleaming marble floors and glowing walls, but Gruv's corner was a stark contrast, grimy, neglected, and dank. The poor alien dog, if one could even call him that, was a sight that repulsed all who saw him. His flesh, a sickly green, oozed with a slimy secretion that left trails wherever he went. His multiple eyes blinked independently of each other, giving him an unsettling, almost insectoid appearance. His mouth was filled with jagged, crooked teeth, which protruded even when closed, giving him a constant snarl. To the Arvaliths, Gruv was more than just ugly, he was a mistake. Why do we even keep that thing? Lady Velora Arvalith, the matriarch of the family, often sneered as she hurried past Gruv's corner, her silver robes billowing like smoke behind her. It makes us look barbaric, keeping such a hideous creature in the house. Her husband, Lord Keth Arvalith, was no more sympathetic. It's tradition, he said with a sigh whenever she complained, which was often. Every Zorathian household must keep a Koroth, as it has been for centuries. It is a mark of dignity. Gruv was, in fact, a Koroth, a species that had been bred by the Zorathians eons ago as pets and status symbols. But something had gone wrong in Gruv's genetics, a mutation perhaps, or simply bad luck. While most Koroths were sleek and majestic, Gruv was the epitome of a misfit. If it weren't for the old traditions, the Arvaliths would have abandoned him years ago. He had no playtime, no companionship, and barely enough food. His meals consisted of leftover scraps, often thrown into his corner with a dismissive flick of the hand. The rest of the time, Gruv was ignored, forgotten like a piece of old furniture that was just too heavy to get rid of. The Arvaliths were a wealthy and influential family, constantly hosting grand galas and high-profile gatherings for the galactic elite. Diplomats, business moguls, and even warlords came to Zaylar Prime to bask in the Arvaliths' hospitality. On these nights, the mansion came alive with music, laughter, and vibrant light, but Gruv was never part of it. He would hear the sounds of the party from his corner, where the thick drapes muffled the noise but not the vibrations of the music. Gruv would curl into himself, his slimy skin glistening dimly in the low light, and his many eyes would blink as he lay there, forgotten. And yet, deep inside, Gruv was aware of the world around him. He might have been ugly and neglected, but he was not stupid. His numerous eyes had seen more than the Arvaliths realized, and though he couldn't speak, he had developed a keen sense of observation. He noticed the small things, the arrogance of the Zorathians, the way they fawned over each other's beauty, and how they shunned anything that didn't meet their perfect standards. He had seen Lady Velora grow increasingly obsessed with maintaining her youth, undergoing secret procedures to erase the smallest wrinkle. He had watched Lord Keth engage in backdoor deals with shady visitors, all while maintaining his pristine public image. In those quiet moments, as Gruv lay in the dark, a strange feeling stirred within him. It was faint, like the flicker of a distant star, but it was there, a sense of power, of something waiting to be awakened. Sometimes, when his eyes all blinked in unison and he focused on the flickering shadows cast by the distant galas, he could almost feel the energy in the air, vibrating around him like invisible threads. He felt as though he could reach out and change something. But as soon as the feeling came, it was gone, leaving Gruv wondering if it was all in his mind. Still, the neglect gnawed at him. His body, so ugly to others, felt heavy with the weight of loneliness. He had never been shown affection, never had anyone to care for him. His existence was an afterthought, a mere obligation in the grand scheme of Zorathian pride. But there was something else, something Gruv could not yet understand. On the rare occasions when the stars aligned just right and the moons of Zalar Prime cast a peculiar glow through his chamber, Gruv would feel a subtle surge, like an electrical current running through his veins. His skin would ripple with energy, and his multiple eyes would sharpen, seeing beyond the walls of the house, beyond the planet itself, to distant places he couldn't yet comprehend. The universe, it seemed, was waiting for him. One night, during another grand party, Gruv lay quietly in his corner, watching the shadows on the wall. His eyes blinked slowly, one by one, as the faint feeling of that strange power hummed in the back of his mind. The guests mingled and danced, oblivious to the small creature in the shadows, but Gruv was not oblivious to them. As the night deepened, the faint hum inside Gruv began to grow louder, vibrating through his bones. He didn't know why, but this night felt different. The air seemed charged with an energy he hadn't felt before, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Gruv shifted slightly, his many eyes wide, alert. In the sky above Zalar Prime, a distant star flickered, unnoticed by the partygoers, but not by Gruv. Something was coming. Something big. For the first time in his life, Gruv felt a strange sense of anticipation, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, his days of being neglected and forgotten were about to come to an end. In the shadows of the grand mansion, the ugliest creature in the galaxy blinked, and his eyes gleamed with a power he had yet to fully understand. The night on Zalar Prime was calm and clear, with the sky a vast canvas of shimmering stars. But beneath that peaceful exterior, something profound was beginning to stir, something ancient and powerful that would soon ripple through the galaxy. Gruv lay in his usual corner, the dim light of the moons casting soft shadows on his grotesque form. His green, slimy skin glistened faintly, but there was an unusual stillness about him tonight. The distant hum he had felt before was no longer faint. It pulsed through him now like a low, thrumming beat. His many eyes blinked rapidly, sensing that the energy in the air was different, sharper, more intense. Above the planet, in the vastness of space, an invisible wave was moving across the stars. It wasn't a physical phenomenon, but rather a disturbance in the fabric of reality itself, a pulse of ancient cosmic energy long thought to be lost to the universe. This energy, known in legend as the Echo of Eternity, had once been the source of unimaginable power for an ancient, forgotten civilization. The Zorathians had believed those stories to be nothing more than myth, but they were wrong. As the wave approached Zalar Prime, it reached out across the stars, searching for a vessel, a host capable of channeling its immense power. It needed someone unique, and Gruv, the ugly, neglected Korath, was precisely what it sought. Inside the grand Arvalith mansion, the party continued in full swing. Guests dressed in shimmering robes and adorned with precious galactic gems filled the ballroom, their laughter ringing through the halls. Lord Keth and Lady Valora mingled with their prestigious guests, blissfully unaware of the cosmic events unfolding outside. But Gruv felt it. His body began to vibrate, his skin rippling with strange, pulsating waves. He tried to rise to his feet, but his limbs felt heavy, as if something immense was pressing down on him. His eyes blinked faster, their independent movements now aligning into a single, focused gaze. Then, with a sudden surge, the wave hit Zalar Prime. Gruv's entire body convulsed as the cosmic energy flowed through him, coursing like lightning through his veins. His mind expanded, stretching out beyond the confines of the Arvalith mansion, beyond the planet, beyond even the galaxy. He could feel every star, every planet, every living being in the universe. His consciousness had been unleashed, no longer bound by the physical limitations of his small, ugly form. For the first time in his life, Gruv understood. He was not a mistake. He was not some unfortunate mutation. He was the last of his kind, a species genetically engineered long ago by an ancient race known as the Thalnorians. The Thalnorians had been masters of cosmic energy, harnessing the echo of eternity to manipulate time, space, and reality itself. They had created the Koroths as living vessels for this power, but when their civilization collapsed eons ago, the Koroths had scattered across the stars, lost and forgotten. Gruv was one of the few that remained. The Arvaliths had no idea that the ugly pet they had neglected for years was, in fact, a dormant powerhouse. As the energy coursed through Gruv, his body began to change. His once slimy, misshapen form grew more defined, more powerful. His many eyes glowed with an intense light, no longer blinking erratically but focusing with precision and clarity. His crooked teeth sharpened, his claws lengthened, and his skin shimmered with a brilliant, iridescent glow. The cosmic force inside him was awakening fully, transforming him into the very thing he was always meant to be, a living conduit for the echo of eternity. Gruv's mind raced with new understanding. He could see not only the present but also the past, the distant history of the Thalnorians and their ultimate fall. He saw the wars fought over the echo, the civilizations that had risen and fallen in their quest to control it. He saw how his own species, the Koroths, had been scattered across the stars, forgotten by time. And he saw the future, the immense potential and the terrible danger that the echo of eternity posed. In the ballroom, the party continued, oblivious to the storm building just beneath their feet. Gruv slowly rose from the floor, his once hunched posture now replaced with a regal bearing. The room around him seemed to tremble as his newfound power radiated outward, causing the lights to flicker and the walls to hum with energy. It was a subtle disturbance at first, but one that did not go unnoticed by the more sensitive guests. Lady Velora, laughing with a group of dignitaries, suddenly paused, a chill running down her spine. She glanced around, her silver eyes narrowing as she noticed the flickering lights. "What is this?" she muttered, irritation creeping into her voice. Lord Keth, standing beside her, waved it off. "It's nothing, my dear. Likely just a minor power fluctuation. I'll have the engineers look into it." But as the lights continued to flicker, growing more erratic, a low, resonant hum filled the room. The guests began to murmur, looking around uneasily. The music faltered, the musicians exchanging confused glances as their instruments picked up strange vibrations. The atmosphere shifted, the once jubilant mood of the party now tainted by an undercurrent of tension. And then, a blast of energy erupted from the corner of the room, where Gruv had been hidden for so long. The guests gasped in shock as a blinding light filled the space, emanating from the small, ugly creature they had always ignored. The force of the blast sent waves of energy rippling through the room, knocking over tables and sending glasses shattering to the floor. The air itself seemed to warp and bend, and in the midst of it all stood Gruv, transformed. His once grotesque body now glowed with an ethereal light. His eyes, no longer out of sync, shone like stars, burning with intelligence and purpose. His skin, once slimy and misshapen, now shimmered with a pearlescent sheen, as if he were made of the same energy that powered the very stars themselves. The partygoers stood frozen, too shocked to move, their eyes wide with terror and disbelief. Lady Velora stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth in horror. What is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Lord Keth, his usual calm composure shattered, took a step forward, his voice shaking. "Gruv. Is that Dash?" But before he could finish, Gruv's voice, now deep and resonant, filled with the weight of cosmic knowledge, echoed through the room. "I am no longer the creature you once knew," Gruv said, his words reverberating through the walls, through the very air itself. "I have awakened, and with me, the echo of eternity. I was not meant to be your pet. I was meant for something far greater." The guests stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what was happening. They had lived their lives believing in their superiority, their beauty, and their power. And now, the very thing they had dismissed as ugly and worthless had become something beyond their understanding, something far more powerful than any of them could have imagined. Gruv turned his gaze toward the ceiling, his many eyes glowing with the intensity of 1,000 suns. He could feel the energy coursing through him, connecting him to the stars, to the very fabric of the universe itself. He was no longer bound by the limitations of his form, no longer shackled by the neglect of those around him. And as he stood there, his body glowing with cosmic power, Gruv realized that this was just the beginning. The universe had awakened him for a reason, and whatever that reason was, it was far greater than anything the Zorathians or even he had ever known. As the guests trembled in fear, Gruv's transformation was complete. And the galaxy, whether it knew it or not, would soon feel the impact of the power that had just been unleashed. The transformation of Gruv sent shockwaves not only through the Arvalith mansion but across the entire planet of Zalar Prime. The surge of energy that had erupted from his body had done more than rattle the walls of a party. It had broadcasted a signal across the cosmos, a call to power that could not be ignored. Gruv, the creature that had once been overlooked and neglected, was now the focal point of galactic attention. In the days following the fateful night, the skies above Zalar Prime darkened as fleets of warships from across the galaxy began to arrive. Each ship, a massive behemoth of steel and firepower, carried representatives of factions hungry for the power they sensed in Gruv. Some came from distant star systems, seeking to seize control of the Echo of Eternity for their own purposes. Others were bounty hunters, mercenaries, and warlords who had been drawn by rumors of an unimaginable force awakening on Zalar Prime. Among these factions were the Syndicate of Shadows, a ruthless cartel of intergalactic warlords, and the Pylorians, a militant empire bent on controlling every source of power they could find. But most dangerous of all were the Seneschals of Infinity, an ancient order of beings who had guarded the secrets of the universe for eons. The Seneschals had long feared the return of the Echo of Eternity, for its power was unpredictable and had the potential to tear the fabric of reality apart. They had once controlled it, and they would stop at nothing to control it again. The Arvaliths, having no idea what they had unleashed, were thrown into chaos. They had been wealthy, powerful, and respected until now. Now, they were little more than terrified witnesses to the growing storm that surrounded their home. Lord Keth and Lady Velora, once so proud and dismissive, were reduced to desperate whispers and frantic plotting, unsure of how to deal with the creature they had mistreated for years. "We have to stop this," Lord Keth muttered, pacing the grand halls of the mansion as a holographic map of the approaching fleets hovered in the air before him. "The entire galaxy is descending on Zalar Prime. They're coming for him." Lady Velora, her normally flawless composure shattered, wrung her hands. "It's a nightmare. How could we have known? He was just a pet." But Gruv was no longer the simple, ugly creature they had once ignored. He was now something far more powerful and dangerous than either of them could comprehend. In the days since his transformation, Gruv had retreated to the depths of the mansion, deep into the cavernous chambers beneath the surface of Zalar Prime, where the energy of the planet itself pulsed and resonated. There, he meditated, learning to control the Echo of Eternity, his body radiating with the cosmic energy that surged through him. He had no desire for revenge. Despite the years of neglect, Gruv was not driven by bitterness. He had transcended those petty emotions. His mind was now filled with the echoes of ancient wisdom, of civilizations long gone, and of powers beyond the understanding of mortals. Yet he also understood that the galaxy was not ready to accept him, not as he was now. And they would come for him, this he knew. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than expected. The first to descend on Zalar Prime were the Syndicate of Shadows. Their fleet of sleek, black warships blotted out the skies as they hovered over the planet. These warlords were ruthless, having toppled entire civilizations in their quest for power. They sent an ultimatum to the Arvaliths, demanding the surrender of Gruv, claiming him as their prize. Lord Keth, trembling as he received the message, knew that refusing would bring devastation to Zalar Prime. But before he could respond, a low, resonant voice filled the air. Gruv had emerged from his seclusion, his eyes burning with the light of 1,000 stars. His presence in the chamber was overwhelming, and the very ground seemed to hum with power as he spoke. "They will not take me," Gruv said, his voice echoing in their minds. I am no one's prize. Lady Velora backed away, her once manicured hands shaking. What are you going to do? Gruff turned his many eyes toward her, his gaze soft but resolute. What must be done? Without another word, Gruff vanished, his body folding into space itself, disappearing in an instant. High above, in the void of space, the Syndicate's warships prepared to launch their assault. But before the first shot could be fired, the space around them began to warp. The stars twisted, bending in strange, impossible patterns, as if the very fabric of the universe was being rewritten. Gruff appeared in the midst of their fleet, floating in the vacuum of space, his body aglow with cosmic energy. The warlords inside the flagship watched in horror as Gruff raised a single clawed paw. With a mere flick of his wrist, the lead warship crumpled like paper, its metal hull folding in on itself as though crushed by an invisible hand. Explosions rippled through the fleet as one ship after another was torn apart by forces they couldn't comprehend. The Syndicate of Shadows, who had terrorized star systems for centuries, was no match for Gruff. Within moments, their entire fleet was decimated, left as drifting wreckage in the cold depths of space. News of the destruction spread quickly, and panic gripped the galaxy. The power Gruff wielded was far beyond anything they had anticipated. The remaining factions, fearing they too would be destroyed, hesitated. But the seneschals of infinity, ancient and wise, were not so easily deterred. Their fleet arrived next, not with warships or weapons, but with something far more dangerous: knowledge. The seneschals had studied the echo of eternity for millennia. They had seen the rise and fall of civilizations that had sought to control it. They understood that Gruff, for all his power, was still new to the echo. He had only begun to scratch the surface of what it could do, and that made him vulnerable. From their floating temple ship, the seneschals broadcast a message, not to the Arvaliths, but directly to Gruff. Child of the Koroths, their voices whispered in his mind, you are not alone. You carry the weight of the universe on your shoulders. But you do not yet understand it. Come to us, and we will teach you. We will show you the true potential of the echo of eternity. Gruff, still hovering in the orbit of Zalar Prime, felt their presence. He knew of the seneschals and their ancient knowledge. Part of him was drawn to their offer, tempted by the possibility of mastering the power that now flowed through him. But he also knew the danger that came with it. The seneschals had no intention of helping him. They sought only to control him, to bend his will to their own. The stars flickered as Gruff contemplated his decision. He could destroy the seneschals as he had the Syndicate, but deep inside, he felt there was another way. On Zalar Prime, the people watched in awe as their once-forgotten pet became the focal point of a galactic struggle. The Arvaliths, cowering in their mansion, could do nothing but wait, terrified of the consequences of their neglect. But Gruff, now fully aware of his power, chose a path that surprised everyone. He did not seek revenge. He did not seek control. Instead, he extended his consciousness out to the stars, connecting with the minds of the seneschals, with the leaders of the Pylorians, with every being that had come to seize his power. And in that moment, Gruff made a choice that no one had expected. I will not be a weapon, Gruff's voice echoed across the galaxy, resonating in the minds of every living being. I will not be a tool for conquest or control. The echo of eternity is not meant for destruction. It is meant to heal, to unite, to bring balance to a galaxy that has been torn apart by greed and arrogance. With a single, unified thought, Gruff released a wave of energy across the cosmos. It was not a wave of destruction, but of restoration. Stars that had long since burned out reignited, planets on the verge of collapse were stabilized, and ancient civilizations lost to time were restored to life. The very fabric of the galaxy seemed to pulse with new vitality, as if Gruff's power had rewritten the laws of reality itself. The fleets that had gathered to fight over Gruff's power found themselves stranded in awe. No one had ever seen such a display of cosmic strength used for peace. The seneschals, humbled by Gruff's decision, withdrew, acknowledging that the echo of eternity was beyond even their control. And so, the galaxy stood in shock not at the power Gruv wielded, but at the wisdom with which he chose to use it. The galaxy was forever changed. And Gruv, the once neglected alien dog, had become its guardian. The galaxy was forever changed. In the aftermath of Gruv's unprecedented display of cosmic power, the warships that had once sought to seize him for their own gain slowly drifted away from Zalar Prime. The Syndicate of Shadows, utterly destroyed, left behind only floating wreckage. The remaining factions, including the Pylorians and even the Seneschals of Infinity, withdrew with a new and profound understanding Gruv was not a weapon to be controlled. He was something far greater, a force that defied their narrow ambitions. The galaxy buzzed with rumors and tales of the Cosmic Guardian, the being who had harnessed the legendary echo of eternity not for conquest or destruction, but to heal and restore. Star systems that had suffered under the tyranny of warlords found new hope as planets on the brink of collapse were restored to life. Ancient civilizations, long forgotten, were revived by the pulse of Gruv's energy. It was as if the galaxy itself had been reborn, a new era ushered in by a creature once thought to be nothing more than an ugly, insignificant pet. Yet on Zalar Prime, in the Grand Arvalith Mansion, things were different. Lord Keth and Lady Valora, once proud and influential, now found themselves in a state of disbelief. The very being they had dismissed and neglected for years had become a legend throughout the cosmos, and their role in his transformation was one they could not escape. Their status crumbled as word spread of their cruelty, and they became pariahs even among their own kind. The house that had once been a symbol of their power now felt like a prison, the empty halls echoing with the memories of their ignorance. "I can't believe it," Lady Valora whispered one evening, her once flawless complexion now pale and drawn. "We had him here, right in front of us, and we threw him away. What have we done?" Lord Keth, normally composed and sharp, sat in silence. His hands, once steady from years of deal-making and manipulation, trembled. He couldn't shake the memory of that moment, the moment when Gruv had stood before them, glowing with the power of 1,000 suns, and spoken words that had shaken him to his core. Gruv had spared them, but in doing so had shown them a mirror, forcing them to confront their own arrogance and cruelty. But Gruv did not return to the mansion. He had no need for the trappings of luxury or the status symbols that the Zorathians prized so much. He had outgrown that life. He had become something beyond the petty concerns of individuals like the Arvaliths. Instead, Gruv wandered the galaxy, his consciousness flowing through the stars, always aware of the cosmic forces around him. He had become attuned to the very fabric of the universe, his power not just something he wielded, but something that was a part of him. Wherever he went, the galaxy felt his presence. One day, in a distant corner of the galaxy, a small, dying planet called Ocelor, once ravaged by a series of interstellar wars, felt the presence of Gruv. Ocelor had been abandoned by most, left as a barren wasteland with only a few scattered tribes struggling to survive. The once fertile lands had been turned to dust, and the oceans had long since evaporated under the heat of its failing sun. But as Gruv descended upon the planet, a wave of energy swept across the surface. The soil beneath his feet began to shimmer with a soft light, and the once dead and cracked earth began to stir. Tiny shoots of green sprouted from the ground, quickly growing into vibrant plants and trees. The air, once filled with the stench of decay, became crisp and fresh. Rivers began to flow again, fed by underground reservoirs that had long been forgotten. The people of Ocelor, those few who had remained, emerged from their shelters in awe. They watched as their dying world was reborn, its barren landscape transformed into a paradise in mere moments. They fell to their knees in gratitude, offering prayers to the cosmic force that had saved them. But Gruv, floating above the ground, radiating a calm, gentle light, did not accept their worship. He merely observed, his many eyes blinking in unison as he restored balance to the planet. "I am not your god," Gruv's voice resonated in their minds. "I am but a guardian, here to protect and restore what has been lost. It is you who will guide this world, not I." His message was clear: The power he wielded was not for domination, not for control, but for healing and preservation. His role was not to rule, but to ensure that life wherever it existed could flourish. Across the galaxy, similar scenes unfolded. Planets devastated by war or natural disaster were revitalized by Grove's touch. Civilizations that had been on the verge of collapse found themselves lifted, not by force, but by the simple restoration of balance. Grove moved from system to system, a quiet, unseen force that left worlds better than they had been before. In time, the stories of the Cosmic Guardian spread to every corner of the galaxy. Children were told of the once ugly creature who had become the savior of countless worlds, a being who had rejected the temptations of power and vengeance in favor of compassion and wisdom. Entire religions sprang up, inspired by his actions, though Grove himself had no desire for such things. He remained a humble presence, always watching, always listening, always ready to intervene when the balance of the galaxy was threatened. But not all beings in the galaxy were so easily swayed by his message of peace. Far beyond the reach of most civilizations, in the dark, cold depths of space, forces began to stir. There were those who resented Grove's influence, who saw his actions as interference in the natural order of power. These factions, warlords, and secret cabals began to conspire, searching for a way to combat the cosmic force that had risen from nowhere. They delved into ancient archives, seeking forgotten technologies and forbidden knowledge, hoping to find a way to challenge the power of the echo of eternity. Grove was aware of them. He could feel the ripples of their actions, the subtle disturbances in the cosmic web that hinted at a coming storm. Yet he did not move against them. He understood that there would always be those who sought power for selfish reasons. His role was not to destroy them, but to maintain balance, to protect the innocent, and to guide the galaxy toward a better future. On Zalar Prime, the once great Arvalith family was forgotten. Their mansion, which had once been filled with guests from across the galaxy, now stood empty, a relic of a bygone era. The Zorathians, who had once prided themselves on their beauty and status, had been humbled by the rise of Grove. Their culture began to shift, slowly but surely, as they realized that true worth was not in appearances, but in how one used the power they were given. And Grove? He continued his journey, moving through the galaxy as a quiet, benevolent force. He was neither ruler nor conqueror, neither hero nor god. He was simply Grove, the last of the Koroths, the guardian of the echo of eternity. In the vast expanse of the universe, where stars flickered and died, where planets were born and destroyed, Grove remained vigilant, watching over the fragile balance of life and ensuring that no being, no matter how small or ugly, was ever forgotten again. And so, the galaxy, in awe of its unexpected savior, learned a lesson that would endure for generations. Even the most neglected, the most overlooked, and the most seemingly insignificant among us can hold the power to change the universe.